is a good thing, something that we should have more of, that we should be more of, that we should practice more of. And in many ways, it's true. Empathy is often described as a core emotional intelligence. It helps us understand one another. It allows us to recognize when someone is hurting. That's a form of empathy. In therapy, empathy has been essential. It helps people feel seen, heard, and safe enough to open up and to be on the path of healing. And in conversations about personality patterns, especially when we're talking about harm or disconnection, one of the first things we notice is the absence of empathy. And this isn't just in psychology. In many spiritual traditions, empathy is also the kind of ideal. We're encouraged to open our hearts, to feel with others, to be sensitive, aware, and compassionate. Empathy becomes almost synonymous with being loving, with being awake, with being spiritually connected. And because of that, many people come to believe that the more they feel, the more compassionate they are. So we learn that empathy matters. Empathy is good. Empathy is something we should develop. And at the same time, there's another part of the story that doesn't get talked about that often. Empathy doesn't just begin as a concept. It begins much earlier. It begins in childhood. There is no language for it in childhood at the time. There's no framework. There's no choice. There's only adaptation. In environments where there is unpredictability, tension, emotional volatility, or unspoken pain, a child develops an extraordinarily sensitivity, not as a gift at first, but as a form of safety. A child forms a way to anticipate, a way to prepare, a way to soften what might come next. This is where what we call later empathy often begins. It's a form of intelligence. It's also a form, mostly, of protection. A child without agency learns to track the emotional field around them because their well-being depends on it. They learn to feel what others feel. And maybe this rings a bell for some of us here. Sometimes before those even feel it themselves, we are aware of what they're feeling. We are aware of the emotion in the room. And this sensitivity does not limit itself just to people. It expands out and extends into animals, our relationships with our pets, with nature, with the environment itself. It's a subtle form of energy. And over time, something else begins to happen. Empathy becomes directional. It becomes especially attuned to distress. I heard a story recently from an AA meeting, and someone there said they were an empath and that they had to be very careful about being around negative people because they would absorb their energies and their emotions, and it would take days to recover. And someone next to them said, well, you're an empath. Why do you pick up pain so easily? But why don't you pick up joy and happiness in the same way? Because empathy is, as it often develops, was not designed for joy. It was designed for protection. It was designed as a defense mechanism. So when we feel another person's pain, we just don't notice it. We are triggered by it. We enter it with our unresolved reactions, our own wounding. And this is where empathy can begin to shift into something else. Something we now call empathic distress. Empathic distress is when we become more overwhelmed by another person's suffering than able to stay present with them. It becomes about our reaction, our pain, and not their experience. So we turn their issues into ours. We start to pull away because it feels like it's too much and we haven't yet learned how to move through the discomfort. Or we go the other direction and we try to help. But the helping is driven by our own discomfort. We fix, we overgive, we take on too much. It becomes our monkey. It becomes our responsibility. And without realizing it, we can begin to lose our sense of where we end and the other person begins. So this is a kind of enmeshment, a pulling in, a merging with another person's experience. Sometimes this shows up as codependency, where our sense of stability becomes tied to how the other person is feeling or doing. Sometimes it shows up as trauma bonding, where we feel drawn into cycles of intensity, care, and distress that feel familiar, even if they're not healthy. It becomes bordering on addiction. And often what is being activated are our own unhealed places, our own triggers. Kelly McGonigal describes this as pathological altruism, helping in order to relieve our own stress, our guilt, or unease. Not because we don't care, but because we care without steadiness, without the boundaries, without our emotional borders. And most of this happens quietly, even without us realizing it. And this is where the distinction begins to matter, because empathy and compassion are not the same. What we're now learning, both psychologically and neurologically, is that they are different experiences in the body, in the brain. Research from Tanya Singer shows that when we empathize with someone's pain, the brain activates the same networks that we use when we feel our pain. So it's a direct hit. So when you feel overwhelmed by someone else's suffering, that's not weakness. That's your nervous system doing what it's supposed to do when we're standing in the realm and in the energy of empathy. But compassion is different. Compassion does not mean taking on another person's pain, and it does not mean fixing it. Compassion recognizes that someone is suffering and allows that experience to just be there. And so when we are standing and using compassion, a different part of our brain is being fired. It's not the same part of the brain that is being fired when we're in empathy. Compassion creates space, as much space as is needed, okay? So we sit with it. We don't fix it. In the work of Tanya Singer, compassion is described as a feeling of warmth, of concern, and of care for the other person, all along with the genuine desire to support their well-being. So the focus is on the other person, not ourselves. Compassion is not to take over, not to resolve, but to stay connected. That heart field, the resonance. It is not a feeling with, as we have with empathy. It is a feeling for the other person. And this difference matters because when empathy becomes too strong, it can lead to distress and withdrawal. But compassion leads to something very different. It allows us to remain present, to stay in relationship with suffering without becoming it, which is really the form of healing. Okay? Compassion does not remove pain. It changes the field around it. It actually shows the other person what's possible. Instead of urgency, there is space. Instead of overwhelm, there is steadiness. Instead of fixing, there is presence. Compassion doesn't fix the moment, it gives the moment room to breathe. And even more hopeful, it can be learned. It's a process, it's a practice. In Singer studies, even a few days of compassionate training reduced stress and increased positive emotional states, even while people were still witnessing suffering. So compassion doesn't take away the pain, it allows us to be with it differently. And this is where the work becomes both simple and profound. Gabor Mate, Dr. Mate, who I've spoke about before, reminds us that when someone is activated, we often see something deeper than the moment itself. In other words, the response is greater than what's activating them. And it's something that's shaped earlier, something that has not yet been fully understood, but it becomes present. It's like a volcano. And instead of trying to fix it in compassion, we stay curious about it. Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. What is this? At the same time, Carl Jung invites us to recognize that what we react to most strongly in others often touches something within us. So when somebody says something or does something that irritates you, yeah, it's because we haven't done the work. It still irritates ourselves. So the other person is a projection for us. So in compassion, then the attention widens. We're not just focused on the other person, we also include ourselves in awareness. So we're not asking, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with them? We're gently asking, what is happening here? And what is it touching in me? What is it that I'm present to? When we begin to notice what is happening in us, we are no longer pulled in the same way, and we have a little more space. Dr. Robin Baer describes validation as a kind of practice, a process we move through when we are willing to slow down and truly be with another person. Is that not really love? We notice what is happening in us, the urge to fix, the urge to explain the matter, the trying to make it better. And instead of acting on it, we pause. We breathe in and pause. We open up the space, and we don't try and fill it in. We don't rush. We listen with curiosity, not to respond, but to understand. Okay? Where we feel it, where we understand it. And from there, we can reflect that understanding back to the person. Not to change the person, but to let them know, I see you. I hear you. What you are feeling makes sense to me. Validation isn't about agreeing, it's about understanding. And in that moment, something sacred happens. This is what I call sacred seeing, where you're seeing someone truly. Sacred seeing is the moment when someone is fully seen, fully heard, and allowed to be exactly where they are. We don't fix them, we don't change them, and we don't hurry it along. We just meet them there. And when this happens, the nervous system softens. Okay? The need to defend begins to ease, not because anything was solved, but because something was finally allowed. Okay? That which we've ostracized or orphaned is finally allowed to be in the room without being judged. And this is where compassion becomes something we can practice, not as an idea, but as a way of being. You don't have to identify as an empath to learn compassion. This is available to all of us. But because compassion is not about feeling everything, it's about learning to stay. And for many of us, that is the hardest part, to stay, to be in the moment, to stay with presence. Because when something uncomfortable arises, whether it's in us or in someone else, we start to pull away because it feels like it's too much and that we haven't learned how to stay. And that's where compassion asks for something different. Not to fix, not to escape, not to stay. I keep repeating that. But to stay with what is here. To stay with what is arising, the unknown. To stay with another person without needing to take over their experience. Again, it's very much like the occupation of taking over someone else's space when it's uncomfortable. This is a skill, and it can be learned. And it begins very simply by noticing what we feel and choosing not to turn away. So I want to offer us just a 30-second practice. Okay? So take in a slow breath. In this moment, be present. You can close your eyes if you like, but I want you to invite in, bring to mind something you've been avoiding. It'll usually come quickly and the ego will say no. Don't judge, just allow in. It could be a small nagging issue, and just let it be here. Notice what you feel in the body. Just notice, welcome it. No fixing, no judging, just notice. Breathe and gently ask, what do you want me to know? What are you trying to show me? What is your purpose for me? What is your job? And listen without forcing an answer. Allow that sensation to be accepted. Just to be with. I'll say thank you. Thank you for showing up so quickly. Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing me this moment of understanding. Thank you for this moment of practicing compassion. Take one more breath and come on back. To paraphrase Ernest Holmes, he says, you can't give to others what you don't have to give, what you haven't given yourself. So these little moments of practice of compassion, self-compassion, are important and they're easy. And I'm going to ask you to recall it when you are sitting in a situation where someone is deeply in anxiety or fear or pain. And you just observe yourself and wanting to jump in and say, oh, let me help, let me fix. I have the answer. And just sit with them and say, yes, I hear you. I see you. I'm here. You can be completely yourself here. And offer and extend a sense of compassion, not only to the other, but to yourself. Empathy shows us what emotions and feelings are important, and they can overwhelm. And when you're with someone and they're in overwhelm, and your empathy is unloose and overwhelmed, there's no one driving the ship. You're going to cycle around each other. So this is a way to prevent that, to move forward. And compassion is the container where we can shift into a sacred seeing of acceptance of both ourselves and of the other. I am launching a free class on the difference between empathy and compassion, and the Beatnik is opening a new show May 9th on selective compassion. And there will be a call for art, for reading, And then on Friday the 14th of May, a panel discussion, taking this introduction even further. There'll be a rabbi, an evangelist, preacher, myself, I think representing mental health, I'm not sure, and another person. And so I invite you to join us if this is of interest to you. And also I'll be posting the class on empathy and compassion on the newsletter here. It's free, and if you want to take it further for your own studies. So it's my pleasure to share with you, and I offer you my heart and compassion. Thank you.
Thank you.